Welcome to the latest Gold Invest interview. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Alexander Miskovic, CEO of Terra Balcanica Resources, or TERA on the CSE. As the name suggests, Terra is exploring mainly in Europe, in Bosnia, specifically at its Vjegorzanic project. There have been some very interesting developments since I last spoke to Alexander. It's a while back, to be honest, and we're very keen to get an update. Welcome, Alex.
Good afternoon, Bjorn. Thank you so much for having me on, and greetings to all the goldinvest.e investors and followers.
Thank you. It's good to have you on again. To get things going, please give us your 60 seconds pitch for viewers that are not yet familiar with the story and to remind us of what Terra is about.
So Terra Balcanica Resource Corp, trading on the Canadian Securities Exchange under the ticker Terra, TERA, and on Frankfurt under the ticker UB10 or UB1, is a junior Canadian explorer, primarily operating in Europe. So as the name suggests, our focus has been the Balkans, more specifically the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina. For those ones who are familiar with the story of Adriatic metals, they surely know where Bosnia is and what treasures it can unearth. We are located about 80 kilometers east of Adriatic's Vareš silver mine. And in the region of Vjegorzanic, which is the name of our project, divided into two licenses, we have been exploring for the last 3.5, 4 years for a polymetallic suite of metals, including primarily zinc, lead, antimony, and silver. So those four. There's also gold involved as well, found in primarily two different targets. Found this side primarily two different targets. On the North American side, on this side of the Atlantic, is subsequent to our last chat. Terra has exposed itself, I think, very strategically to a very large swath of land in northern Saskatchewan, world famous Athabasca Basin, which produced 1/4 of all the uranium ever produced, which is where we are hoping to unearth some uranium successes. So 600 square kilometers portfolio option from Fulcrum Metals PLC, a UK-based company last year. That, I think, strategically exposes Terra Balcanica to both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, which I think is important. So North America, Europe, a very critical suite of elements, both critical elements such as antimony, silver, zinc, but also energy metals such as uranium. At a time, obviously, when we are all witnesses of critical shortage of many of these metals, and I project that shortage not to go away anytime soon. So
we agree there, yes.
Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what Terra Balcanica is. I think there's a very exciting time for us in the next 12 months, which I'm more than happy to inform your listeners about.
Well, thank you very much for this introduction. As you said, I just want to add that, as you said, it's not only important to be geographically diverse, but also in the metals you have. And of course, critical metals, energy metals are two of the most important trends there in that regard over the last couple of years. Not only that, but longer. To continue, let's get to an overview of the Vjegorzanic property.
Sure.
Overall, what's the location, geological setting, infrastructure?
We are located in eastern Bosnia, 168 kilometers of land divided into two licenses. Mm-hmm. We have done a very systematic, geologically prudent work over the course of 2020, 2021. The first drill hole took place in January of 2022. Over the course of those year and a half, we have identified three primary targets, of which we have since really focused on two. One is called Trumavici, and the other one is called Brezhany. I'll tell you a little bit more about both. What is important for your listeners to understand is that right next to us, literally 7 miles or 7 kilometers away as a crow flies, we have an operating mine, which is a former Yugoslav mine that has been purchased by Mineko Ltd out of UK, a company that also operates one more mine in Bosnia, Olova mine, lead zinc, and also a few other mines in Serbia. So there are quite a presence regionally. This mine produces, at least according to the latest information, somewhere upwards of 350,000 tons of lead, zinc, silver, antimony, gold concentrate. They're a private company, so it's actually difficult to really get any more information that you can except for the website. But we do know that the mine is operational. It employs quite a lot of people regionally. And they're exploring these epithermal intermediate sulfidation veins that in their case run northeast, southwest, as opposed to ours. which are more or less the same type, just a different trend. To have a mine close by, I think, provides certainly an opportunity for us. So far, we have not engaged in any formal conversations with Mineco. However, it's still early days, and to have a mine which has both the crushing and the flotation circuit on site, exploring the same type of ore that technically we are finding on our properties, is something that Terra Balcanica could potentially leverage as a strategic partnership. Technically, for example, for those ones who know more about mining, would reduce, for example, capex requirements significantly.
Always a concern in these times, of course.
Although I'll tell you honestly that we haven't really gone to Srebrenica magmatic complex and this particular part of Bosnia just because there's a mine. The region was known as a mining district, but we wanted to go there with a different premise to search for porphyry copper deposits and whatnot. And then we found what we have. So we weren't driven by the proximology thesis. We were driven by pure geology. These neogene oligomycene complexes that are prolific through Serbia, Northern Macedonia, and Greece, and then all the way in Turkey, actually are quite scarce in Bosnia. So the only place in Bosnia where similar type of rocks outcrop is actually exactly in Srebrenica. So this was the reason for us to go there. So again, I'll try to be brief. Since then, we have explored, identified, and drilled 2 different targets. One is called Čumavići, which is a 7-kilometer long set of different targets. So they're kind of linearly disposed along the northwest-southeast trending structural feature, a fault, a place that has been explored by the Yugoslavs back in late 70s, early 80s, and they have even identified about 3 million tons or so of ore. However, what the Yugoslavs were searching was lead and zinc. They were not concerned about antimony and silver. But when we came over, drilled, investigated our core assays, we realized that actually we are sitting on a high-grade silver antimony target, not necessarily lead zinc, even though lead zinc is present. In Čumavići area, we have drilled 3 different targets. One is called Seoce, the other one is called Čumavići Ridge, and the third one is called Čumavići Crest. They are, obviously Čumavići Ridge is the one that received the most attention so far. We have about 2,500 meters or so of drilling conducted there. The beauty of the system, it's high grade, average grade between 5 and 700 grams per ton.
Okay.
Now with the antimony being part of the equation and antimony prices going through the roof, we have identified just on Čumavići Ridge certainly about 150 meters of a long strike continuity of the system, about 200 meters down dip, and the average thickness of the body is between 5 and 10 meters.
Okay,
so when you multiply those things, even though it's a very early days and it's only one target out of many, of course we haven't still touched 2 other different targets, one called Kazani, the other one called Čumurnica. We are yet to do that. The beautiful thing about Čumavići target is that there is a road running through the middle, which means that you don't necessarily have to have everything in one place. You can add those critical tons and ounces by basically collecting a little bit from different places and then trucking, let's say, all of that ore to a nearby flotation and crushing circuit. That's kind of a beauty of it. Although, of course, we would want to have everything in one place if we could, and that's why we are focusing primarily on Čumavići Ridge and Čumavići Crest. When it comes to Brežani, located 13 kilometers to the southeast, we have a geochemical target, quite large in size, 650 times 500 meters across, that coincides in space exactly with a massive conductivity and magnetics target. These geophysical techniques were deployed by Terra Balcanica in May of 2021, and we have identified a coincidence of conductivity, magnetic anomaly, and obviously all the geochemical wildcards that were thrown at us. Increase in arsenic, bismuth, tellurium, obviously zinc, lead, antimony, and whatnot. So this is where we put the first primary hole back in August of 2023 in hope of trying to intersect the deep porphyry. On the way down to the deep porphyry, we have actually sliced through 3 different things. Okay. At the very surface, we have about 100-meter thick layer of gold-rich skarn. For those ones who are geologists, they know what skarn is. So about, grading at about 0.61 grams per ton gold. Relatively okay content, but what I like about it is the fact it starts from surface and it goes for the entire 90 meters without interruption. Okay. We have subsequently drilled 4 more holes into this superficial gold layer, and we are going to be releasing those results fairly soon. On the way down to the porphyry, which we, by the way, have intersected, we have sliced through a zone of 20 meters wide, polymetallic intermediate sulfidation, structurally controlled ore, which projects towards the northeast and shallows as it goes, rich in antimony, silver, lead, and zinc, primarily silver and antimony. And that was the discovery announced on the 20th of January of this year, 2025, for those ones who are following the story. And then subsequently, underneath that, we actually did punch through a porphyry. However, the contents of the gold and copper were, at least in this primary virgin hole, were fairly limited. So we decided to focus on the intermediate sulfidation body, the 20-meter thick one, the discovery, and the gold on the surface as two relatively low-hanging fruit that we can pick up and advance with the capital that we have. So that's in a nutshell what has been done so far, and I can tell you later on what the plans are for the event.
We're certainly going to come to that, and I think it sounds very interesting. I mean, it sounds as if you weren't really looking for the gold content on your way down. So that's, however, what the content is. It's a pleasant surprise. The other thing I remember is when we talked about, I think it was in the summer of 23 that we last talked, and we talked, of course, about the antimony, but it hadn't become such a focus since then. So it was just one of a suite of metals that you had there. Now, though, it's very much in focus because the price has gone, let's say, ballistic, to coin a word. So give our viewers an overview of why, what happened in between.
In retrospect, when you look at a rear view mirror, we technically are actually primarily a silver antimony project. When you look at actually various proportions of different metals, yes, we have not been paying attention kind of closely to it. It was always a part of our silver equivalent calculation. We've never excluded it. However, we didn't really put much emphasis until, of course, about half a year ago, when I looked at the antimony prices and realized that there is an antimony story developing here. I'm sure many of your followers know it, but I think the price of antimony this time last year, maybe slightly earlier, let's say January 2024, were something like $4 or $5 a pound, similar to copper.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, of course, most significantly affected by the ban on exports introduced by the Chinese government in November of 2024, the price has, to kind of repeat what you said, it was skyrocketed. Mm. I think it reached the peak the other day, $60,000 a ton. When you divide that by pounds in a ton, you end up with $27 a pound. Now, this rise, it's difficult to project how sustained it can be. However, what's undeniable is the fact that there is a real shortage of antimony. So Chinese have not introduced the ban for nothing. They are producers of 45% of the world's antimony themselves. And obviously, either out of the fear for long-term outlook or because they know something we don't, they put a ban. Of course, what that has done is just galvanize the story even more. Now we hear that American government is very much in need of antimony as well. Antimony was explored primarily by Idaho back in the 50s and 60s and then kind of forgotten about. Now it looks like there is a renaissance there taking place as well. The fact that, that made me basically go back and look at our assays, and I realized, oh my God, if I do and recalculate now silver equivalent values based on the new numbers and new prices, I'm basically doubling the value of the project. We still in our press releases try to use conservative numbers. I think in the last press release, when we mentioned the discovery in Brezhny, I used $17 a pound. We have since readjusted our numbers. So whoever wants to check our corporate website on the title page of www.terrabresources.com, we'll see on the page 17 of a corporate deck that we have now changed the numbers. Obviously, I cannot change back the already issued press releases, but I can certainly recalculate values because it's real. Mm-hmm. That is the value of the project right now. So that's really a welcome addition to what I thought was always a very good story. Our silver values were always very high. And now with the addition of that critical metal antimony, I think it becomes even more lucrative. What I think particularly is interesting for Terra is the fact that we are located at European backyard in a sense, or right at the doorstep of European Union. Unfortunately now, because of the geopolitical situation and the need to arm, I wish it wasn't the case, but because of the recent move by the European Union to rearm the continent, well, guess what? Antimony is used as a strategic armoring alloy for steel, for tanks, and
Yeah.
armored vehicles and whatnot. So, I mean, again, it's difficult to project the price, but in the future, 1 year from now, and usually people say whatever goes up comes down, but I think it's going to stabilize at quite a significant number and remain there so long we have this supply shortage. Of course, antimony is only one part of the many critical metals that are in demand, but we have it, and we have it in quite a high number. The discovery in Brezhny featured the sweet part of that intercept, about 10 meters thick, of 1.5% antimony, more or less. So that's a very mineable result. Of course, what remains for Terra to do is to confirm the continuity of that body and come up with a tonnage. We can talk about it later on. Antimony, again, for those who do not know about the metal, used in solar panels, primarily by the Chinese manufacturers, strategic armoring, so defense industry, used, of course, traditionally as an alloy to steel to make it stronger and lighter. Again, when you look at the map of Europe, I mean, there aren't that many antimony projects. Balkans, however, does have them. So there are former antimony mines in the Balkans, either opened or ran by the communist government. The geology of the Balkans is usually intermediate sulfidation polymetallic and does have an antimony component in addition to lead, zinc, and silver, both in Serbia and Bosnia. I think something that we necessarily weren't paying too much attention to, but as they say, we'll take it and we'll run with it. Our exploration plan does not really significantly now change because we have an antimony as a part of the mix. We are still going to continue to be driven by the structure and the shape of the body, and how we approach drilling it will be determined based on the assays. But of course, both Trumovici and Brezhny contain significant amounts of antimony, which is a welcome thing for us.
Well, and also the other, probably, let's say, dominant is if I say that, if I have that taken that away correctly, is the silver richness of the deposit. And silver, as taken that away correctly, is the silver richness of the deposit. And silver,
correct,
as most of us know, Noah has also had quite a good run already over the last 12 months at the minimum. There you have it. You have the two metals that are very much in demand. Also, I think the silver market is deficit driven to some extent too, especially and you mentioned that for the antimony, it's also used in the solar industry, and the projections there are that silver is going to be very much in demand going forward, and already going forward from
to be honest, Bjorn, I was and people were saying this time last year, they were saying that it is going to run to $50 an ounce. That obviously hasn't happened. The other day it hit 34. So obviously it has reached a different base level, and it's going to, I think, stay there. And now it's just a matter of, whether it's going to go any higher. But obviously silver is something that, many junior market, small cap investors are very bullish on at the moment.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to see how that goes. But as we said earlier, then tell us how you're going to profit from those favorable market conditions. What are the goals for this year? What are you planning to do?
One thing that was, I must use the word frustrating with Terra's story so far, is that despite having world-class intercepts, and I'm not going to shy away from that word, for people who don't know about Terra, they can go and Google Terra, our previous press releases and intercepts, and then just go and compare us with the other competitors on something called, let's say, Junior Mining Hub or minerdex.com. These are two, and there are many more different platforms that compare intercepts in the world. Obviously, Terra doesn't have a resource. I mean, that's for sure. We are aiming towards having one within the next 24 months. However, when you look at the pure intercept value, grade times thickness, we were always ranked, at least in terms of silver space, top 5, top 10 in the world.
Okay.
Yet, for various different reasons, we were not able to really monetize on that. And of course, I would like to say again, it's not an excuse, that market conditions were primary reasons for that. Capital has simply dried up. There was no interest to pick up on early exploration stories, in a sense, when many of the producers were also trading at a discount. That gave me a bit of a consolation, knowing that I'm not the only one. However, there was a kind of frustration deep down, given the fact that we had something to report and something to be proud of. Technically, I think our team has delivered after working so hard to define these targets and drilling them. Yet the share price didn't really go anywhere. One way to address that issue in a kind of an immediate way is for management has gotten together and decided to, this time around, invest significantly more into promotion and marketing. Get the proverbial eyeballs on the story, get people familiarized, those ones who do not know about Terra or those ones who know about us but have forgotten us the value, the intrinsic value of these assets, and primarily the promise of. That's ultimately what we all at junior mining cap companies are giving or offering to investors. When you compare us, let's say, to Vizsla Silver or Adriatic Metals, their commencement is very much similar to us, both in terms of the share price, where they kind of lifted off, the time span over which they developed the initial resource, the mixture of metals they have, and obviously, in case of Adriatic Metals, the geographic proximity to us. I always joke and say I would love to replicate even 1/4 of Adriatic's story. I think everybody would be happy. Now that we feel the sentiment is changing, or it has to some extent changed, there is undeniable desire for critical metals, and maybe a handful of them, or at least a dozen of them are in focus, and we happen to have, I think, 3 of those, if not more. Our strategic location in Europe, proximity to the industrial hubs of Germany and Switzerland and France, and connections by rail. We've done in 2024 quite a few things. We have, for those ones who didn't know or don't know about us, we have executed relatively considerable, but at the same time sensible corporate consolidation. We have rolled back 3-1, trying to respect the shareholders, but at the same time provide room for more fresh blood. Especially North American Canadian investors like nice compact structures, and our outstanding share count is only $52 million. We have backstopped the price. We did not allow it to collapse subsequent to rollback. We have acquired uranium. We have appointed a couple of key people as part of our personnel just recently. Mr. Matthew Coyard as our business development officer, who's going to be working alongside with me to really get the message out and help me with the financing. Kind of a, house cleaning last year, adding, I think, a critical portfolio of uranium, preparing ourselves for what seems to be a change in sentiment, and then capitalizing on 2025.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're certainly up to speed now, and we can't wait to hear the next results and hear when you start drilling. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Absolutely. All of that is going to come very soon. Thank you so much for your time, Bjorn, and I'll talk to you soon.